Hi everybody, I'm Anucha and this is my YouTube channel. Thank you for visiting. Today I'm going to show you how to make a Seder plate out of something very ironic, a pizza pan. Now, my goal really was to make a Mosaic Seder plate. I do have a tutorial on my blog of a DIY menorah train, a Mosaic menorah train, and I used a sheet pan to make that. And so when I was trying to figure out how I could make a beautiful Mosaic Seder plate, a pizza pan seemed like the perfect option. We are going to mosaic this, and it's going to be beautiful. And I'm going to show you how to make this. This is definitely a bit of a more advanced project. You can sort of take it as far as you like. I'm crafting it having in mind that Seder plates don't really get heavy, dirty use. Usually you just put a little bit of food, you wipe it clean, nobody really eats the food off the Seder plate, and you move on. And so, like, I don't think it needs any advanced sealing. You can resin coat it. I did resin coat my menorah tray. But we're just gonna make a fun mosaic design, and you can always put your food in glass bowls if you don't wanna put it directly on. I don't know why the camera blinked out. I'm not sure at what stage it did. I basically trace those circles. You can use a single template. I'm not sure if mine shifted at all. Now I'm using the same tiles that I used for my menorah, and I'm kind of separating them by color family. So I do want to sort of mark the difference between the circles and the outside, but I do want to keep it that abstract vibe that looks so cool on the menorah plate. And so I'm separating color families just for starters. So we're doing, you know, the almost white ones, light pastel neutrals. And I am going to roughly lay it out, not to position the tiles, but just to make sure that I have enough of each. But definitely you can buy individual color packs of tiles. This particular one that I bought, because it's such a random mix, is quite inexpensive. I will definitely link to it in the description of this video. I got it on Amazon. All right, so now I'm going to do a little bit of mapping and just, you know, lay these out in the middle in sort of like an abstract pattern. I'm going to actually specifically try to be very random with this. And I'm going to, first of all, make sure that I have enough and get a general idea of where I want them. Now, I find that it is very hard to sort of glue them one at a time to place them. It's very tedious. So I don't necessarily recommend doing that. I recommend, you know, sort of when you decided what you want in one spot roughly, you know, portioning them, making sure there's a good balance. That one has too many smalls, not enough larges, you know, like that. Kind of just moving it to the side and gluing the whole thing down, you know, in one sort of batch. That's how I like to do mosaics, is batch gluing. And it looks like I do have enough of these pastel colors to fill the circles. I may need to get another pack of mosaics regardless. It should roughly be enough, but when you're trying to do specific colors in specific areas, and sometimes you do run a little shorter than if you're just being totally random. So we're going to go ahead and, you know, finish up doing that, and then we're going to start gluing. And now just a reminder that we are allowing this to be abstract specifically. We don't want it to be very much a picture, but we do want to mark the spot where the foods will go. Okay, so here you can see I by mistake stole some from that one as I was going. And we have the rough round shape. You'll see that there are some spaces there, so it's not going to be a perfect circle, but that's not what we're going for. So one thing that I always try to do here is to be as transparent as possible when teaching you how to make a craft as far as the costs are concerned and everything else. So one thing to know that's very important to know about this craft is mosaics are not going to be an inexpensive craft. Mosaic tiles cost, and personally in my efforts to sort of use what I had, you could see, I'm not going to show you the process even though I recorded it, I did just put random colors on as I was trying to use what I had. And then I realized that that just isn't going to work for this project. You know, when you want to have this clearly delineated, you do want some sort of contrast. Now, I was trying to, like I said, use what I had. And so I did not want to go ahead and buy, for example, all blue mosaic tiles. You could say that I learned my lesson the hard way because I did that. And I will tell you for yourself that you most definitely should, first of all, expect to spend some money on this project. Just the pack of tiles cost, this set costs, I believe, in the $10 to $14 range. I'm not sure. And you're going to need a little bit more than just one set, maybe two, especially if you're, again, being very selective with your colors, because random mixes definitely cost less. And the next thing is the pizza tray. I bought it at the Dollar Tree. I'm not sure what they cost now at the Dollar Tree. I bought them last year when they were $1.25 at the Dollar Tree. And you might need to spend more, especially if you don't have a Dollar Tree near you and all that. However, a project like this could make it's a real craft. It's something that can make a nice solid piece of Judaica. So why am I launching into this at this stage? Because as you can see, I'm laying out my tiles, and I want to sort of give you that, you know, preface. I did try this without laying out my tiles, and when you're doing like different colors, it's a lot harder to sort of do that without laying out the tiles, especially when you need something like this to show, and then you lay it out, and then it doesn't really stay as you try to glue them in piece by piece. It's a little bit hard to work that way, to glue them one at a time. They don't really stay in position. But I really regret not doing that to begin with, because even though I was able to pry it off with pliers and everything, I really did waste a lot of crafting time. I bought already another package of mixed colors because I saw it wasn't going to be enough, and I have to return that. And so you can see that really the look I'm going for is these cobalt blue ones. And there are a lot of light blues in this pack. I did order also a pack that should have more teals. I also like the look of that. But we're going to see, and I'm going to this time not make the same mistake, even if I have to completely, you know, reposition everything and nothing stays in position, at least I'll be able to see the design. Now, one thing I'm considering doing is making a bit of a more neat design, letting that stay abstract, but then surrounding each of these, if I have enough, with these tiles so that it starts looking a little bit nicer. And again, just like I did with these, you don't have to keep the positioning if you do a general layout to see how it will look. But I really do want this to be highlighted, especially since I'm not labeling them. It's a positioning tool, you know, and so I will definitely do a lot more planning now. And I'm going to definitely be showing a lot of parts of this video sped up. And again, I'm seeing that I have so many light blues in this package, I might have been better off just going and buying cobalt blue. I'm not sure. It's not coming out how I would have liked to on the first try, which is, again, something I'm trying to be transparent about. And again, one of the reasons why I do these videos, why you sort of need me to show this to you, this is kind of my job description, is to do this experimentation for you so that you're not, you know, spending the money on the supplies. And I can show it to you in a way that looks good to begin with. This is why I always recommend that you look through my whole video, because I do, you know, edit out the very, meaning I'm editing out all the time I spent, you know, putting together colors that didn't work, but I am also, sometimes I can, sometimes I have to show it to you sort of like as postscript insights. But you can see that like this whole, even with only the blues, because there are so many light blues, you know, that I'm really not liking how they look in there. Because it just isn't the contrast I was going for, even when I ordered this pack. I feel like I need to, you know, go and do a very specific design, even though I kind of like the abstract nature of this. I also find that once you add the grout, it really like highlights things a little bit more, changes how they look. And you see like all of these, I'm not really sure what to do with. I could put them in the middle together. I really like the look of the blue, the sea glass style look goes with the whole theme of Pesach and Kriyat Yam Suf, and I really like that. So I'm like a little bit torn as to how to style this. So at this stage, what I'm going to do, and again, I'm going to speed this up a little bit so as not to bore you too much, but I want you to see this part of the process. So I'm going to be doing a lot of experimenting, just placing my tiles on, and again, I'm waiting for another package that's supposed to arrive tomorrow, and you know, you won't necessarily know when I change days here. But I am waiting for another package that's going to be arriving tomorrow, hopefully. And I'm going to show you through the process of sort of how I'm designing this and working with the tiles that I have at this stage, because I'm not doing any more ordering and returning. Yeah, and again, you really do want to, if I have enough of these to surround them, that could be a cool way to sort of make a ridge, right? But you'll see this part of the process and understand, what I went through to figure out my design. You can either copy mine one-to-one or understand what the process is going to be like from a more honest perspective. I really do like the look of the, flat ones, and that creates a bit of a well. These are actually very hard to grout around and to clean up. So that's my biggest reservation with using these at all. In a sense, I'd rather just glue them around the edge and see if we could work with those, even though this does look very nice. So I think that's going to be my determining factor, that for now I'm not using this in the design. All right, so here's the last pack I picked up, and you can see it's also definitely on the lighter end of things. Again, I would have liked for it to have more dark. I guess, like I said, you can individually buy tiles, but by now I should have enough to just frame each one out in cobalt blue, and that'll be enough to highlight it. And I'm just showing you how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to show you sped up me actually doing it. And I'm going to just glue those in place, and then I'm going, a nice little border. And then I'm going to fill the surrounding areas with the different shades of blue in all different shapes. These I'm not going to use because that's going to make the grout stick up. In some places it gets a little harder. But I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to speed this up so you can just kind of watch me and put in any notes I have along the way. That way you could just watch me do it sped up and see the process sort of in a time lapse. All right, so we finished the border. Now I have to figure out how I'm doing the rest, and I've made this mistake a number of times where I didn't first map it out. So I am compelled to do at least a little bit of mapping out. So we're mixing together the colors we want. I'll tell you at this stage that you really might, yeah, this still looks good. You really might want to, get very specific tiles. I think that was part of my mistake, was that I didn't realize I would be using so many, so I didn't get the very specific tiles that I wanted for this project. All right, so we have our tiles. I feel like this is a good mix of medium to dark blues mixed together, and we're going to basically work on this piecemeal. Now these, we're going to just, put on a section of glue at a time, not too much because it does dry, or it starts being gluable. It doesn't really fully dry, but it stops being gluable quite quickly. And in these tighter sections, we might need to be a little bit more creative, and we're going to be somewhat random. We might stick in some, fun little designs in the middle. But I really like the randomness of how my Hanukkah tray came out, my menorah tray. And so I will try to sort of replicate that, even though we're not doing random colors on this one. And keep in mind that it is nice when there's grout. You don't want too much grout, but you do want to leave some space. These tight spots might need to be a little bit more specifically done. I am going to try to not have any cobalt blue up against the actual rim. And then I'm going to try to make good use of the different shapes and colors and just make this come out nice without stressing too much. Just relax and cover the space. So you can watch a sped up version of this. Of course, I'll add in any notes as I have them. I can see already that it is going to be a bit of a challenge to work around the round shape and keep things looking neat. But who says a challenge is a bad thing? We're just going to try. And one of the best tricks is not to go too tight in those spaces that are challenging you. And we're really trying hard not to go up the side of the tray. And you can see that over here, there isn't really much that we can do in between. And a triangle will get a little bit deeper, so if you don't want the space to be too big, you definitely can go with triangle shapes. However, expect there to be some spaces, and that's fine. There's going to be grout over there. And you can see we're interspersing some sort of patterns in between. And we're sort of really just playing around, seeing what looks good. I'm really liking how this is coming out so far. So I really feel like I've solved all my issues that I had. You could see I'm going easy on the cobalt blue, but outside of this, but I am using it. Medium blues, repeating elements that are going to pick up on each other. When you look from far, your eyes do get drawn to the repeating elements. All right, so we've covered the whole perimeter, and now we have to do the center part. The center part is a little less complicated. The main thing we want to be careful of in the center part is that we still don't put any cobalt blue ones alongside the inside. You can add a little bit of design here, a little bit more if you want, but I think I'm just going to keep it abstract. Here's also where if I wanted to add a little bit of texture, it would make sense to do some of these, but again, I want it to be easier to grout, so I'm not going to do that. Just a little tip, if your glue is starting to look like this, do make sure that you clean it before you try covering it and putting it away. Otherwise, it'll glue itself shut, but that is kind of normal for when you're using it like this. All right, so here we have our Seder plate, fully mosaic. Now, we are going to let this dry completely. I'm going to give it 2 days, even though I was hoping to finish it off tomorrow. I'm going to give it 2 days just so that it could really completely dry. And then we are going to grout it, and I'm going to show you how. And do not be intimidated by that process. It is really not that crazy. You don't need to be a builder or anything to do that. It's a great skill to have in general, and this is the scale project to try it on. So we're going to go ahead and let that dry, and I'll be right back. All right, so we are ready to grout our Seder plate. It's completely dry. We gave it 2 days in a pretty cold environment. And now we're going to mix up our grout. So first of all, just one thing with grout is you never want to wash it down the sink. So you'll either need to let it dry, crack stuff off, wipe as much off as you can while it's still wet. But if you're concerned about that, use disposables. This is a spoon that's dedicated to crafting, and we're going to use that to mix it up. We're going to use a sponge, a big sponge, and some water that we could dip it into. We have our surface protected with a silicone mat. And we have an old card that we can just, use to scrape the grout in. You can use a scraper tool, but you won't necessarily be able to clean it so well, so don't use a good one. So we have some grout left over from when we moved in and we redid some stuff. And we're going to put a few spoonfuls in. Now you can get pre-mixed grout if you're not comfortable with mixing up your own grout, but it's actually not that hard. So we're doing 4 spoonfuls like this should be enough, but it's better to have too much than too little because it's annoying when you have to mix up more. So we are going to do 5 spoonfuls like this, I guess. 4.5. Okay. I don't know if you could see, I made a big mess here. I'm going to wipe that off later. And we're starting slow. Always start slow with adding your water. And your goal is to get a peanut butter consistency. So you can see that absorbed right in. That might have already been too much, but you could always add more powder. Nope, that was not too much. Ooh, that was probably too much. Okay, I spaced out there. I did this last time also. I just on the last one. So I'm going to end up making way too much because this is as you can see, and you can't just spill off the liquid because grout will clog your drains. It's like pouring cement down your drain. If you're doing this project as sort of like a group workshop, you can decide one person can finish it off, or you can actually teach the kids or the participants how to grout. It really depends on who you're working with. There are people who are looking to build skills. This is a good skill to build on the mosaic sort of. But if you're working with people who just want to do the creative part, you might want to just skip this. Now, it has to be able to go through the cracks. Do you need to grout this? The answer is really yes. And the reason for that is that you're just going to have too much stuff getting in between the cracks. It's going to be hard. And it also it could crack off if you abuse it a little bit. Now, obviously, you won't want to finish your grout in mosaic, but it will secure the tiles a little bit just by filling in those cracks. So you'll still want to be gentle with it. You'll want to treat it right. And here we go. So let's do this. So there are different ways you can do it. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just spreading it out with a spoon. And the goal is to get it in between all the tiles. So some people actually do this with hands, with gloved hands. And this is actually going to be a lighter gray than it shows up here. Really, I want the grout to go all the way till there, but I don't want it to stay on the end. So what you would do is you would take your hands like this. And keep in mind that you can't wash your hands after. We're doing gloved hands. The gloves, if you're using reusable gloves, you'll let it dry and then crack it off. If you're using disposable gloves, then you can just put them right in the garbage. It looks like I did make the right amount, especially since I really want to get it in all the holes. So definitely double what I first showed. All right. So now I'm going to work with my hands a little bit. And then I'm going to use the card. So I'm going to work with my hands to get it around every edge. And you don't have to do this. When I made my manure tray, I don't think I used my hands at all. Now we're going to pull in the card. We're going to use the card to scrape and scrape. This is why I really didn't need as much as I put, because at the scraping process, you'll see that I would have had enough. I would have just had to scrape and then continue applying. I probably should have rolled up my sleeves. You definitely want to wear junk clothes. And any extra you can just put in there. And if you see like there's a spot like over there, for example, where you don't have it filled till the edge, you can, you know, scrape it on and then scrape some more off. So we're going to get as much excess as we can off while scraping. And again, you want to put a little bit of pressure, not crazy pressure. You want to put a little bit of pressure because you're effectively pushing the grout in between the tiles. This is a scary step, and it really will help pull the whole project together. You feel like you're sort of dragging mud all over your artwork. But I actually find that it really pulls the project together, and I like how it looks so much better after. Any of my, you know, reservations as to how it came out, how cohesive it is, tend to disappear after I grout it. You can see that I'm like swiping around the edge to sort of make sure I filled in that edge, turning it as needed. I need a little bit more there. And then I'm going to drag without digging in, as much as I can without digging in. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm a hobbyist, so I'm teaching you this from a hobbyist perspective. All right, now we're going to take the sponge and we're going to very gently, we're going to make it barely damp, and we're going to start by cleaning the edge. And remember, you don't want to wash it down the drain. We have a barely damp sponge and we're going to go over it once just to smooth it. And we're going to let that haze over, and then we're going to do our first clean of the tiles. All right, and we are hazy, as you can see, and we're going to go with a very light touch over this with a very barely damp sponge. You can see that it's coming out cleaner in some spots, but I dragged too deep there. I cut off the rope that was causing me issues because it was dragging. I'm going to let it dry a lot more, and then I'm going to go over it with a dry paper towel. Now, usually it's wipeable off because the tile is so shiny, and don't do what I just did. Because the tile is so shiny, you can wipe it off even after it's dry. But you don't want to wait for it to dry like a few days. You want to give it like maybe, I think I'm going to come back to it in a couple of hours and try wiping it with a dry paper towel once the sort of surface of the grout has dried as well. We've reached a point where you can actually touch this and it won't actually come off on your hands. Now some parts are a little bit wetter, and that's because of what I did before. I put too much water. And now's the point where it's going to be much more doable to give it a quick wipe. So now I'm taking a dry paper towel and I'm really focusing much closer on the actual tiles and wiping it off. And because the surface of the tiles is so slick, it comes off really easily. So I'm going to come back to this again soon, and we are going to do it more. But hello, look how beautifully this is coming together. This is starting to already show what the design is going to look like. But I really am taking just a dry paper towel and wiping off as much of the white residue as I can. And I think that really the best approach is to keep checking in on it. Like I said, when this is touchable, that's when you're really able to do it without smearing more. We're going to let it dry a little bit more and go over it one more time, but I'm not even sure it'll need it. Don't just expect to randomly wipe and have it come out nice. You do want to be keeping an eye on it, looking over all of the tiles. So there's some you might want to clean a little bit more around, like over there. So definitely keep your eyes open as you do it. You can spend more time on it if you want more of a careful handicraft. You could spend less time on it if you just want it to be a basic functional project that already looks gorgeous, if you ask me. Now let's talk about sealing this. So they do make food grade tile sealers that you can use for this. They are specifically made for countertops. So they're not tile sealers, sorry. They're grout sealers made for things like countertops and stone backsplashes and other food adjacent areas where you might have grout. So you can use that if you want to seal. If you want to avoid buying other products, don't use it. I personally plan to put glass bowls on each of these. I don't necessarily need this to be food safe. If you're using this as a serving tray or anything else, sometimes we repurpose a flat Seder plate that has modular bowls. We repurpose as a matzah plate for the rest of Pesach. If that's the case, you will want to, maybe seal it a little bit better, just so that it's more food safe. You can use resin, but it will darken the grout. This grout is going to get lighter as it dries, and that'll darken it again and make it look permanently wet. So just keep that in mind. All right, so our Seder plate is dry and it's complete, and I love how it came out. Now, just to remind you, this obviously is not functional in the sense that it does not have bowls. You would want to get little bowls, or if you put food directly on, you will need to seal this somehow. But this creates the structure and the basis for a gorgeous piece of table decor, a Seder plate that you could put on the table. And I was actually nervous that it would look too pizza pan-y, but I really don't think that it does once you have it on the table. I think that the matte silver rim really does complement it. And you can see that we've cleaned up the rim quite nicely. My grout isn't completely smooth. I definitely can use some practice grouting. And you can see at the edges that it's not perfectly neat. Again, that's something I could probably fix with a knife in the semi-dry phase. You can see I could already scrape it off like that. So that's definitely something that's workable. But meanwhile, this creates a beautiful workshop project, something you can do with a group in advance of Pesach with adults, or just something you can make in your own house during your downtime so that you have something pretty to show on the table that you actually made. If you enjoy fun Jewish crafts like this one, functional crafts, crafts for kids, we also shared a lower and, more kid-friendly version of this craft. We share things for basically every holiday, every Jewish holiday. We share the ideas when you need them. Please make sure to subscribe to this channel and comment if you do have any questions about the process. Like this video, share it with anyone who you think may be interested in seeing it. The Jewish world is quite small, and it can actually be quite challenging to establish a channel like this with such a small niche audience. So if you know somebody who would enjoy this, please help me reach the right people so that I can keep on doing what I do. Happy crafting and Chag Sameach.